JJ, did you know today is National Horror Movie Day?
Who's JJ? I'm Captain Howdy. Some people will tell you to play it safe. We're here to tell you to go all out. Welcome to the All Out Blitz. I am your host, JJ Wenne, and I am joined by the punctual palooka himself, Doug Orth. And tonight on the show, Doug shares the insight he has gained from watching film and diving into the analytics from Week 7. So let's jump right into it, Doug. You took some time this week to dive into the batch of wide receivers we need to know about for this week. Starting off with one of my favorite sleepers from a few years ago, the big receiver who was the only 10 I see, Cedric Tillman. So what do I need to know?
Tillman may not be an overly familiar name to NFL-only fans, but Browns got lucky when he slid to the 74th overall pick of the 2023 draft, which was their first selection that year, partially because the Deshaun Watson trade and whatnot. While I provided a huge range of potential outcomes for him in his draft profile 2 springs ago, I gave him a high-end comp to ex-Saint Michael Thomas and rated him as the second best receiver prospect available in that draft. His biggest issues through the first 1.5 seasons of his NFL career were that Cleveland had a stud ex-receiver in Amari Cooper before he arrived. And then the front office continued to make the Browns a refuge for outcast receivers or, the island of misfit toys, as it were, acquiring Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. With all that said, in his first game after replacing Cooper in Week 7, he posted a line befitting of the artist formerly known as Slant Boy with 8 catches on 12 targets for 81 yards. Cleveland made him a priority against the Bengals. He recorded a 80.4% route rate, 36.7% of the team's air yards, and a 23.1% target share. All that sounds, well, maybe not the air yards, but a lot of that sounds like Michael Thomas. Perhaps more importantly, he was involved early. Deshaun Watson threw 2 of his first 3 and 3 of his first 7 passes in Tillman's direction, including a Thomas-like slant on Watson's second pass attempt. In typical 2024 Browns fashion, however, Brown did not target him again before tearing his Achilles right at the end of the first half. Now, you would say that's bad news. Okay, now we're back to the good news again. On the first play following Watson's injury, late in the first half, Dorian Thompson-Robinson threw Tillman a contested catch ball in the end zone that drew a pass interference call and eventually led to Nick Chubb's 1-yard touchdown. Thompson-Robinson went on, or I should just call him DTR. DTR went on to pepper him with 7 targets before he left with a finger injury, including several routes that contributed to Tillman drawing very good 31.3% of the first 3 targets. And that was tied with David Njoku for the team lead. As most of us know by now, Jameis Winston came in about it was about 3:43, I think, is when he came in, 3:43 of the fourth quarter. He spread the ball around more than his 2 predecessors did when he entered the game, but even his connection with Tillman was encouraging. Tillman broke loose for a strong catch and run 25 yards on the duo's 6th offense play together, and he was the clear first read on a high-low concept on the 2-point conversion at the end of the drive.
Oh, I'm sorry. What does this mean for fantasy, buddy? You didn't have a good button on that, buddy.
Okay, this one's going to take a little bit here. Some of the complicating factors surrounding Tillman's fantasy viability for the rest of the season are as follows. 1, will DTR be the quarterback when he is healthy again, or will it be Winston? Now, we've read some stuff since Sunday where it says that DTR was only the backup quarterback last week because of a game plan issue, and that Winston's going to be the starter this week and presumably moving forward. Reason that is kind of important is because I would say the Winston being in there should inspire more confidence for that entire passing game.
Right.
Number 2, Will Cleveland's offense improve as a result of Watson being sidelined, or is the offensive line in such bad shape that it won't make a difference? Now, to that end, Wyatt Teller, I saw where Wyatt Teller, I believe, is in his 21-day window. He's designated to return. Wyatt Teller, for those who don't know, has been a very good guard basically since he got to Cleveland.
Right.
That will be a huge boon for the entire offense. Last but not least, number 3, and this is probably as important as the first two. Do the Browns want to win and decrease their odds of landing Watson's replacement in the 2025 NFL Draft? Okay, so with all that said, is Tillman a lock to do this a few more times this year? Absolutely not, particularly in this offense. Does he have the talent to be a more than serviceable replacement for Cooper, especially if the quarterback play improves? I think absolutely. JJ, you have some thoughts on Mr. Tillman?
Doug, we were talking before the show. I don't think I have any more thoughts about fantasy. I think I might be done. Every thought I had has been wrong. Every player I start either doesn't produce or gets injured. I don't know what to do anymore. So, sure, I'm happy about Cedric Tillman. I liked him as a rookie. I hope he does something good. But I don't freaking know anymore. I don't know. The NFL doesn't make sense to me anymore, Doug. And I don't want to go on a rant and derail us, but I don't know what's happening.
Wow.
Can you talk me through it? Can you assuage my fears about Cedric Tillman? Being like,
well, as to the first part of what you said, that's an off camera conversation. Second of all, yes, no, look, that offense. I won't say the offense is broken, but the offense, Cleveland knows what it is right now, and it's not very good. To that end, Stefanski gave over the play calling duties to Ken Dorsey this week. So, I guess when you're struggling as much as the Browns have, I guess any change is probably good change, or at least one would hope.
But when the Jets went from Zach Wilson to Tim Boyle.
But there's also a common saying in the league, or in fantasy for that matter, there's a reason that bad teams stay bad. So,
yeah.
Look, Tillman, I wrote in my draft profile of him that he was something along the lines of a classic X receiver. This should be a good fit for him. Now, whether the quarterback, and I think that's probably the most important consideration, is the quarterback play going to be, is Winston going to be that much of an upgrade over Watson where it's going to matter? I think the offense is good enough to make Njoku, keep him now in the top 5 tight ends.
Yeah.
After that, I don't know, but I'm certainly going to take my chances on. I probably would prefer. Actually, I know I'd prefer now Tillman over Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore.
I was just going to say that. Who else am I throwing a chip on, right? If I think Jameis Winston's going to improve as a passer, right, improve the Cleveland passing attack, Njoku's number 1. And man, you're right. I'm not picking Jeudy. I'm not picking Elijah Moore. I'd rather take a shot on Tillman than I would those two. Because those two have shown repeatedly and in different locations that they're not getting it done.
Well, and I'll try to make this point real quick. Tillman is a big body. He should be able to win and present a big target for Winston on those short area targets and short to intermediate targets. Jerry Jeudy he can break ankles and does get open, but we just talked about the offensive line. Jerry Jeudy needs time to get open. Right now, Cleveland isn't giving their receivers that. Elijah Moore has turned into more of a space player. I believe he's more than that, but until the Browns think otherwise, he's a space player. Well, here again, if you don't have a lot of time to create space, then he's then his niche is kind of useless.
Well, you know what, Doug? I'm going to do what I've done all year and just keep grinding. And you can keep grinding this season with IDP Plus. So visit idpplus.com and for a limited time, get 20% off any subscription with the promo code PROPS. Get access to our tools, our data, our IDP articles, and don't miss out on our subscriber Discord, where your subscription gets you access to our entire suite of tools who are answering any questions that you may, well, not any question, but fantasy football related questions that you may have. So go to IDP Plus and start your march towards fantasy football glory today. Now, Doug, let's head out to the Bay. Ayuk is out for the year. Debo was healthy for the game for a minute and a half. Now he has pneumonia. Pretty rookie Pearsall is back and getting targets. What are we looking for this week?
Well, okay. Pearsall deserves a ton of credit. Let's get a little bit of background here first. Pearsall deserves a ton of credit for just keeping his sanity through what has been an unreasonable amount of adversity for a rookie. Just to recap, he suffered a thigh/hamstring injury in mid-July and missed most of his training camp with a recurring shoulder injury. He was then shot in the chest during a robbery attempt on August 31st. Shortly thereafter, he was placed on the NFI list and did not resume practicing in full until last week. Pearsall quickly went from a feel-good story to a big part of the team's immediate plan shortly after San Francisco received confirmation that Brandon Ayuk, who tore his ACL and MCL last week, was done for the season. Now, Ayuk's injury was far from the only issue for the Niners in Week 7, as Deebo Samuel faces an uncertain timeline for his return after it was discovered he had pneumonia-like symptoms and had fluid in his lungs. The only thing I'm missing there is hashtag good at football, right? Jawan Jennings did not practice all of last week with a hip injury, and he's no sure thing to return in Week 8. George Kittle's also reportedly dealing with a foot sprain. He seems to be on track for this week, but who knows? 2 months ago, Pearsall appeared to have a little chance of breaking into San Francisco's Big Four, which, McCaffrey and the aforementioned other three. There's now a distinct possibility he might be the healthiest option Brock Purdy has available to him in Week 8, which he could use to cement his place in the passing game heading into the Week 9 bye. As far as the numbers to back up anything here, he led all 49ers receivers in Week 7 with a route participation rate of 81.1%, which is to be expected considering the team was down to him, fellow rookie Jacob Cowing, the erstwhile Chris Conley, and Ronnie Bell at the end.
It's a murderer's row right there.
Oh, yeah, Chris Conley had a nice cup of tea here a few years ago as a deep threat. Ronnie Bell was he was a 7th round draft choice from 2022, I believe. He had about 2 weeks of hype, and then So anyway, when you're down to Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, which for all things considered, it's not bad to have that kind of talent as your 4th and 5th receiver, but you don't want to be there now either. So it is important to remember that one of the primary reasons Pearsall was valued so highly by San Francisco this spring was because the 49ers viewed him as a player, kind of like Ayuk, who could create separation against man coverage, which was a problem for the offense in the team's Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs. So how did he measure up analytically in his debut? He served as the first read on 20% of dropbacks, posted a 8.4 ADOT, and commanded 16.1% of the team's targets. Given what he's dealt with to get to this point, he did about as much as anyone could have expected against a difficult defense. Considering he did not play in the preseason and has so little practice time with the team, I think it would be unreasonable to expect much more than he provided in Week 7 anytime soon.
So I'm happy to hear about Ricky Pearsall. Happy he's back.
Yeah.
How much should I rely on him in fantasy?
Yeah, great question. There's going to be a time when Pearsall will be a highly sought after fantasy asset. It may happen as soon as late this season when he's had more of an opportunity to build some rapport with Purdy. But just like I said, he just returned to practice last week. He didn't have training camp, and you don't build. There's not the NFL schedule, regular season schedule doesn't allow for a lot of team building or a lot of chemistry building between quarterback and receiver once the season started. So keep in mind about hopefully building the rapport with Purdy between now and, say, I don't know, December. I think fantasy managers should have their doubts that time where Pearsall becomes maybe, dare I say, a league winner, but I don't even want to use that. Let's just say a startable asset. I think they should have their doubts. That time will come anytime before December. The 49ers are going to get healthy eventually. CMC is on his way back, presumably. Samuel should be back either this week or after the bye. Juwan Jennings should be back this week or after the bye. Kittle probably will continue playing. So we're back now to no better than fourth or fifth priority in that passing game, which is a highly concentrated passing game as it is, and doesn't have it's not a high volume passing offense.
Well, I'm definitely throwing him in a couple of leagues. I picked him up in 2. And he will be starting in a flex position. But like I said, it's because I lost everybody. Like I lost all my wide receivers. I have a lot of the big doubtfuls next to their names. I don't like that very much. So Ricky Pearsall will get a shot for me this week. Man, I keep using like the wrong phrasing. I apologize. Ricky Pearsall will get his opportunity. Flex position on my rosters this week. But
JJ?
Yeah.
I feel like you're one beer away from writing a country song.
Listen, I don't even need that beer. I'm all hyped up on Mountain Dew and I forgot the quote. Anyway, I'm all hyped up on Mountain Dew and I'm about to jump on you like I don't know, something. Anyway, another crushing injury to my fantasy dreams. Chris Godwin went down with a dislocated ankle. Then Mike Evans left early and is expected to be out until after their Week 11 bye. What am I supposed to do, Doug, with Jalen McMillan? Tell me. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to besmirch a good. He's probably a really good option. So tell me, I'm going to be positive. Tell me about Jalen McMillan.
Okay, yeah, smile when you deliver that, JJ. There you go. Make the
like the horror movie, smile. In theaters now.
National Horror Movie Day, right? Isn't that what you said?
It is.
Okay. Read.
I'm getting murdered like in Psycho in my leagues.
Jalen McMillan is just the most recent example of a player who can see who saw his fantasy value skyrocket due to circumstance, despite coming off a poor game. What was it? 3 catches for 15 yards on 8 targets. Not exactly the stuff that you cash checks based on, right? So, as you mentioned already, alluded to already, the trajectory of Tampa Bay's season likely changed with just under minute remaining in the fourth quarter when Chris Godwin suffered that god-awful dislocated ankle that will end his season. Now, in most cases, fantasy managers can refer back to personnel usage after an injury to determine who the most likely beneficiary will be. Usually these injuries will happen, I don't know, into the first half, early in the third quarter, something like that, where we have 20, 30 plays at least to say, okay, you know what? I saw player X line up as a perimeter receiver on 70% of snaps after. Okay, whatever. The task that I would just referred to is a lot more difficult when the sample size is 6 plays in garbage time. It was 6 plays in garbage time with less than a minute remaining. By my count, Tampa Bay had a receiver in the slot on all 6 plays after Godwin departed. Sterling Shepard lined up inside 5 times, and Trey Palmer lined up inside once, but that was almost like a stack. So I don't know. Let's call it 5.5. Call it 5.5 for Shepard and 1.5 for Palmer. Either way, we didn't see any McMillan slot snaps from that point on. So the 6-play information, what value that information I just gave you provides is up for debate. It's an extremely small sample size in the final minute of a game that had already been decided. Shepard has spent most of his career, college and pro, and we're talking over the course of now about 10 years there. He spent most of his career, football playing career, in the slot, but has been a part-time player when he's been healthy, which hasn't been very often in recent years. So the end of week 7 could have been mostly about convenience and not predictive in any way. I could easily see that. Now, presenting both sides of the story, McMillan has lined up inside on only about a quarter of his snaps this year after playing the slot almost 90% of the time in his final season at the University of Washington. Now, you could ask yourself, okay, if Godwin was spending 60% of his time in the slot, well, then it makes sense why McMillan only had 25% of snaps. And that's really what the debate is here is Shepard just a part-time player? Is McMillan, does it make sense? Because let's face it, if you say McMillan replaces Godwin, then Shepard isn't playing anymore. Now you're bringing in Raheem Jarrett off of, and I think he's just coming off IR. I'm not sure that's the best use of assets either. Anyway, why does any of this make a difference? Okay. New offense coordinator Liam Cohen moved Godwin back to the slot this season after his predecessor, Dave Canales, the Carolina Panthers head coach, used Godwin as a perimeter receiver in his one season calling the shots. Under Canales last year, Godwin failed to average at least 15 PPR fantasy points for the first time since 2018. With Cohen moving Godwin back inside, Godwin was well on his way to having a career year. I didn't do the pace. I didn't do the pace projections or anything like that. But we're talking, I think he was already at 50 catches, 600 some odd yards, and 5 touchdowns. And that's 7 games in. So, pace would probably have him like 110 catches. I don't know, 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, we were talking about some pretty good numbers there. Considering how much Tampa Bay talked up McMillan this summer, the obvious answer to the Bucs' current receiver crisis would appear to be plugging him into Godwin's slot role and letting him work. Problem with that is he had ample time to earn a regular role in a pass-happy offense as the perimeter deep threat last month and did not produce well enough in the last month before missing 2 games with concussion. Now, we know the deal with rookies is that they tend to be inconsistent. So I believe it was on McMillan's first catch. He caught the ball in between 3 defenders, which is the type of thing that is going to earn trust from a quarterback right away. Then we saw a play near the Tampa Bay goal line where I think Baltimore dropped him in coverage, and he was just kind of dancing around the back of the end zone. It must have been a zone coverage. I don't remember it that well, but it must have been zone coverage, and he was just hanging out, waving his hand in the back of the end zone. And it took a while for Mayfield to get back to him, but what he did, McMillan didn't make much of an effort to play. Sometimes receivers have to play defensive back to knock away a bad throw, and he didn't show the kind of effort that you would like a receiver to show in that situation. So what I'm saying, his lack of activity there at the end caused Mayfield's first interception last week.
So you say all of this. So should I be more excited for Shepard or McMillan? What does this mean for fantasy?
Neither McMillan nor Shepard are capable of being the power slot that Godwin is. I think that was part of the reason why he was so good in that role, is because he is a power slot, and not a lot of slot corners have the ability to guard somebody like Chris Godwin. So, like I said, neither McMillan nor Shepard are capable of reprising that role. Okay. Neither McMillan nor Palmer are capable of being the field stretcher or red zone threat that Mike Evans is. Making matters worse for all 3 receivers is that tight end K. Dotton has lined up in the slot more than twice as much as any other healthy Tampa Bay wideout this year. So I can't tell you with any certainty that K. Dotton is the one that benefits here. He very well could be. So the short answer to the Bucs' new receiver problem is that they don't have a good one. But so maybe rather than continuing to air it out, maybe we should expect Tampa Bay to rely more heavily on its running game until Evans returns and lean more on Otten and Rachaad White when it needs to pass.
And so I think with their three-headed rushing attack.
Well, and I read I think on the Twitter machine someone saying about that maybe Rachaad White becomes the new Alvin Kamara. Well, okay, there's one Alvin Kamara, and Rachaad White ain't that. Okay, he's not anywhere close to that as a runner. He's similar as a receiving running back. If that's what you mean, if you're reprising or if you're creating that role for him as in the passing game, definitely. I believe last week was the first time Rachaad White was actually decent as a rusher, maybe since the beginning of last year. I don't recall the efficiency metrics for Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker weren't as good as they were for Rachaad White, but I think there's a little bit more to it than just White got scared of losing his job and balled out. I think it was more light boxes and the situations that White was used on. Anyway, so, but what I would like to see is that Rachaad White is made more of a priority in the passing game, and almost have him and K. Dotton basically split Godwin's role. And I don't mean as a true slot receiver. I mean as in terms of taking his targets and then leaving everybody else to just reducing the amount of shall we say, stuff that McMillan, Sterling Shepard, and Trey Palmer have to do.
So I had picked up Baker Mayfield in a few leagues. Especially where I had Anthony Richardson or some other disappointing quarterback. Should I be looking to get rid of Mayfield right now? If he has nobody to pass to, as scrappy as he is, I don't know if he's going to be able to manufacture passing yards with this trio of receivers.
If you can, I was looking at his rest of season schedule. If you are a believer in having two quarterbacks, I'm talking one quarterback leagues because that's what I primarily play in. Obviously, super flex, you're holding on to them regardless. But the rest of the season schedule lines up nicely for Tampa Bay. You're going to have to bite the bullet for the next month. I believe when Mike Evans gets back, you're going to see You're not going to see. I don't think you're going to see Mayfield return to his first half production, but I don't. I would hate to part with him if I didn't have to right now. If you are a believer in rostering two quarterbacks in a one quarterback league, I think he will still return. I think around, shall we say, Thanksgiving, because I think that's about what time Mike Evans is supposed to be back. I think around that time you're going to want to have him as a matchup play down the stretch. So hold if you can, but if you're in dire straits, then I would not blame you if you want to go with somebody, believe it or not, Drake May, for example. I don't think we're there yet. And like I said, I have Mayfield in a couple of leagues too, and I had to seriously consider cutting him. My waivers go through tonight. I was thinking I've got to find a roster spot for some receivers and whatnot, and I can't do it. I can't do it with Mayfield even. And I'm in good position with quarterbacks on my Mayfield teams. I believe I have Jordan Love on either Jordan Love or Jaden Daniels or somebody like that on most of my Mayfield teams. So so long answer to your short question, sit tight on Mayfield if you can.
Well, I don't like sitting tight, Doug. I like a lot of room, and it's football season, and that means a trip to see your favorite team on the road, right? Well, With Expedia, you get the best prices when traveling, and we are thrilled to announce our partnership. Need a flight to Denver? Rent a car in Miami or a hotel in San Francisco? Go to idpplus.com/Expedia and build the best package. Travel to the big game and make sure to offer some extra legroom. I don't know what that meant, but Doug, let's finish up in the Mile High City where rookie Troy Franklin is jumping up the depth chart. The question I keep asking, can I trust him, Doug?
Okay, well, what?
Just
What
say
do
no.
we?
Just say no. We can end the segment.
No. Okay. Well, no. Good night, everybody. Yeah. Hey. Depends what you mean by trust, right? If you're
Wow, only a man would say that.
the whole purpose of this column was to introduce people to receivers that look. It's 80 to 90% of the people that are, shall we say, casual to maybe even, I wouldn't say hardcore, but casual to maybe slightly above casual players are not going to be familiar with Cedric Tillman. They're going to be familiar with Ricky Pearsall because he was first round pick, but they're going to remember him more for what happened to him this summer than anything that he did at Florida. Jalen McMillan, third round pick. I heard some buzz about him. He hasn't produced. That's why he's been on my waiver wire for however long. So, I mean, we're not talking about. There's a reason that these guys were on the waiver wire. So, anyway, Franklin has had his own little issue, shall we say. So there's, at least in the fantasy community, there may have been no other player who NFL general managers and fantasy managers disagreed on more this spring than Franklin. Latter group, this was before we started the pod, but I saw and heard many stories of people taking Troy Franklin in the first round of their rookie drafts. Okay. The former group, being the NFL general managers, they said, I don't care what you think, fantasy managers. He was the 17th receiver off the board in the actual NFL draft. Making matters worse, and you'll remember that our good friend Devon Avele stole his thunder in camp. Yeah. I would love the explanation on that. Bowles out week 1. Kind of injured week 2, inactive, I think, for the next 3 weeks or something like that. Comes back, 8 targets. Oh, my God. I don't know. So while we were figuring out with what was, or hoping we could get an answer on Vele, Franklin appeared destined for the same fate that Marvin Mims had last year, which was, oh, he's going to get playing time. He didn't get any playing time. Franklin saw his first real bump in playing time in week 6. Now, there are certain advantages to being able to play with your college quarterback, that being Bo Nix. Yep. And that probably helped his cause as much as anything. But I do get the sense now that Sean Payton and company are starting to buy into Franklin as well. His first read share over the last 2 games is not going to impress anyone. It's 11.1%. And that's that's an alarmingly low number considering the relative lack of competition that Denver has after Cortland Sutton. But it is also likely the product of Peyton still making the rookie earnest snaps. On the plus side, he has 9 targets and 15.3% target share over those last 2 games, leads the team. So that's how much things are getting spread out around there, that 15.3% target share is leading the team over the last 2 weeks. Yeah. Design touches and where players get them are often a great way to tell how a coaching staff feels about that player. Peyton got Franklin involved right away against the Saints, bringing him across the formation to limit on the second play of the game, or actually the Knicks' first pass attempt, to eliminate any chance of contact on that. So think of it as an extended rub route, but just using the entire offensive line and defensive line as a screen. That only resulted in a 2-yard gain, but he was just inches away from picking up 22 yards on a deep out. About 2 minutes later, Knicks had to roll out against his body to his left. Probably missed the throw by less than he threw it just in front of Franklin there. Could have easily been another 22 yards. Anyway, in all, Franklin earned 4 targets in the first quarter alone in that Saints game. The highlight of his Week 7 performance was at the 9:38 mark of the second quarter when he used the speed. And I don't know that he actually was clocked. I don't know if I can't remember now if he ran a 40 time or not at the combine, but we believe that he's in the high 4.3s. Anyway, you kind of saw that speed that made him such a dynamic deep threat in college. He says he got open. And I call this the Tyreek Hill route because I saw it happen so much in Kansas City. Tyreek Hill would just, Andy Reid would line him in the slot on one side, have him run up about 10 to 12 yards, and then just say, okay, my guy's faster than you get open because you're faster than the guy guarding you. And that's kind of what happened here. He ran behind some zone coverage, picked up 30 yards on that play. That's the kind of thing with a guy with that speed. I kind of expect that type of thing to be one of Franklin's bread and butter routes in the pros. I don't think with Bo Nix's arm you're going to be running a lot of go routes, right? So you're going to have to keep it to the deep intermediate to shallow deep routes, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Perhaps most notably in that Saints blowout, Franklin had 6 targets in a game that Courtland Sutton had 0. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all of us were affected by that, on some level. Yes.
0.
Yeah.
0.0.
Does last week mean that Sutton is no longer the clear number 1 in Denver? I'd say that seems highly unlikely, at least for the rest of this season. What is more exciting is that Franklin's average separation score, which is quickly becoming a signature fantasy points metric, is a team high 0.103 for the season. He has been particularly strong on routes such as the end dig, which the average separation score there is 0.222, and the hitch 0.143, obviously better than his team high 0.13 that I just mentioned. And you would expect that, given that since teams respect his deep speed so much, you would expect the routes that come back short, again like an in or a hitch, you would expect those routes to have more potency.
Right.
So anyway, given how much respect defenses should have for his speed, that's where I'm going with that.
Now, after Sutton did what he did last week, or what they did to Sutton.
Yeah, exactly.
Why should I, or what does this Franklin's information mean for fantasy?
The conservative nature of this offense likely means that Franklin is going to be no more than a wide receiver for fantasy purposes. But what I do like is that his explosiveness gives him a chance to be an occasional week winner. I think the idea that Peyton and company had when they drafted him, we're familiar with the Robert Meachams, the Deveray Hendersons, those vertical stretch speed guys.
Yep.
I think that's what Denver had in mind when they drafted Franklin. Difference is that Bo Nix isn't Drew Brees. I don't think he's going to be able to uncork the deep ball ever as well as Drew Brees did. But I want to buy into the connection that Nix and Franklin have. That's going to continue to grow. I don't know that there's going to be enough volume in the Denver passing game for Franklin to move past what he has been the last 2 weeks, which has been a suitable flex play in deeper leagues.
So let me ask you this question, Doug.
Sure.
Taking the 4 wide receivers you talked about and their quarterbacks. So we have Troy Franklin and Nix, Ricky Pearsall and Purdy, Cedric Tillman and Jameis Winston, and Jalen McMillan and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
How would you rank those duos?
Glad you asked that. Far and away, my favorite is Tillman. Of the 4 guys we talked about, far and away, I believe Tillman. I don't think he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement. That would be ridiculous to think that he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement for Amari Cooper. But Cooper was demanding. He was drawing a fairly hefty target share before he got traded. I think it's reasonable that Tillman steps.
Okay.
Maybe not quite into that. We're not talking 25% target share, but I think we're talking 20 plus, and that's playable. That's playable in fantasy. After that, so we said got Franklin. I think Pearsall has way too much chemistry building to get done, so I'm going to put him at the bottom. But I do believe if he shows the route running chops that I know he has, I could see him being a fantasy playoff stud. But that's what we're talking about. I think we're talking about December before we see an impact from him. So if you are in a deeper league and you just say, I know I'm going to make the playoffs, I just want to stash one guy right now that I think has the potential to be something special, maybe he's your guy. But I don't. A lot of managers don't have that luxury, right? I mean, we're just trying to get through the weeks, right? We're just trying to get through the bye weeks right now, stack wins. Hopefully, we can get a top 2 seed so we can get a bye. We're not in that position where we can just stash somebody and not playing for 6 weeks. So that leaves us with, I believe, was Troy Franklin and McMillan. This one's tough to call. I like Tampa Bay's offense, and then that's what it's going to boil down to is I like Tampa Bay's offense more than I do Denver's, and so I think there's an outside chance McMillan does step into Godwin's role. I don't think it's a likely chance. I do think there's a small chance, and if that happens and he ends up being the primary slot for the rest of the year now, then we're talking about somebody who's playable as a low-end wide receiver 3 pretty much most weeks. So Franklin, I think you're sticking him in there as a bye week replacement and hoping he hits on that big vertical or maybe that big deep route that I was talking about earlier. The deep over route. And maybe he takes one of those for a touchdown, but touchdowns are fickle. We know that. So,
much like fantasy, touchdowns are fickle. So, Doug's definitive rankings of these 4 wide receivers are Tillman Winston, followed by McMillan Mayfield, Franklin Nix, and finally, Pearsall and Purdy. All right, sir. Well, it's time to say goodbye. Let the people know where they can find us and any final thoughts you may have, Doug.
I don't have much to say. The article that we based this all on dropped earlier today. Please go check it out at Fantasy Points. It's free as it usually is. And then for my Thursday night, Friday morning article at FF Today, I'll be doing the second half of my trade targets idea. Last week I did quarterbacks and running backs, highlighted 10 of those players that I would be either buying. It's not a buy sell article so much as it is providing reasons why I would either want to buy or sell, not so much telling you that you should. I don't like to write that way. I don't do buy sell. My job is to provide the information, and it's your job as the manager to take the information and do with it as you please. So I'll be doing that with receivers and tight ends this week. And then I think my article idea for next week, and we'll talk about next week's article next week, but I think I'll probably be looking about 4 weeks down the road and favorable matchups across all the positions and who we should be targeting to help us get through the bye weeks.
Well, that article definitely won't help me because I plan on quitting fantasy much sooner than that. I'm at JJ Wenne on Twitter. Thank you for taking the time to watch, tune into the podcast. Thank you to Doug for all of his work. Make sure you're following him over on Fantasy Points and FF today. He's doing great work. Please hit subscribe on both the IDP Plus and our amazing IDP Plus Bets channels on YouTube. You can catch me tomorrow night on the Rider Dynasty podcast when we go live at 6 p.m. We're going to talk about rookies. And remember, when in doubt, go all out. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.